We're there.
Woo! I love it when a plan comes together. This is exciting.
No viewers as yet. Fingers crossed.
Excellent. Well, you know, we are our own best company here, so it'd be nice if people show up. Yeah, people are often a couple of minutes late, so we'll do small talk.
Exactly. So what's the weather like in Canada?
We have turned the corner to autumn, or fall, as they call it out here. So, you know, I went out to dinner last night. I was wearing my little woolly hoodie because it was, you know, and there was a nip in the air. It was a bit chilly, but it's going to be pretty good. I think it'll be like 20 degrees or something today, sunny. So it's into that kind of classic crisp fall weather. So very nice.
Beautiful, excellent. Here it is sunny, bright blue skies, sunshine is out. It's like a summer's day.
Wow, that's just
and mid-September.
Excellent.
Right, well, should we crack in?
I think we should crack in.
So, good morning, everyone. This is welcome to our audience, our Hangout audience. We're recording this, so it'll be available for those who haven't been able to join us today.
Wait, we're recording this? I didn't do makeup. I didn't do hair. Oh my God.
Do you want to go now and just get the makeup done?
I don't think anything makeup's going to do is going to save me at this stage. So let's just carry on.
So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Jonathan Hill. Catalyst Performance and Leadership Development is my company. My link to Michael, my comrade today, is I'm the UK program leader for the Box of Crayons program. So it's a delight to welcome you onto the Hangout. Michael, do you want to have a quick intro?
Sure. So I'm Michael Bungay-Stanier. I am the senior partner at Box of Crayons. We're based, Toronto is our global headquarters, but we do work around the world, typically with Fortune 1000 companies. Our big mission is to help people and organizations do less good work and more great work. But where we've really come to specialize is helping busy managers coach in 10 minutes or less. And the majority of our programs are directed around that. And I think this conversation is going to be a mix of kind of talking about great work and how do we help you as a busy manager and a leader and your teams do more great work. But we're definitely, because we have this bias, going to be sharing some tactics that have a coaching orientation to them. I've written a few books. In fact, I'm going to do a tiny bit of self-promotion here, which is I have a new book coming out March 1st. It's called The Coaching Habit. And if you go to thecoachinghabit.com, you'll see some nice blurbs written by people, but you also have a chance to sign up so that you get pre-publication specials and deals and bonuses and the like. So if you're interested in that at all, it's actually, if I say it myself, I think it's a pretty good book. You can just sign up on that webpage there. It's kind of freshly up, so I'm pretty excited about it.
Brilliant, fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you. I will go and have a look myself. So there you go. There's one viewer. So to our viewers who've jumped on, we wanted to make this very much an informative, conversational 45 minutes. That's how long we'll be, probably. We'd love to hear your input as well in terms of this topic. You know, how do you focus and have more impact and work less hard? So begin to think about that. So 2 ways of communicating. You should have the group chat, which is the box on, I think, on the right-hand side of your screen. So jump into that. Those of you come in through on the Google link can do that. Otherwise, those who are on the YouTube link viewing, you can simply email you can see it, the footer just at my neck level, catalysthangouts@yahoo.com. We'd love to hear your ideas, your stories around this, your thoughts, and do share that.
And I'm just showing how cool and hip I am by using emoticons in the group chat there. That's how tech savvy I am. I only look old. I'm really pretty hip to it.
bringing a little fun to the 45 minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah, brilliant. So a little bit of context. Michael and I thought this would be a great topic. As he said, it links to very much the Box of Crayons programs, but I think in general, we're very much in a VUCA environment. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, it's ambiguous. We're busy, we're overwhelmed. So we thought, why not help folks to think about some strategies? How do we cut through all of that noise, that busyness, distraction, and really help people to work less hard and have more impact? So we've got some strategies to share with you today.
Yeah.
And as the CMI, the Chartered Management Institute has also pointed out, complexity is one of the biggest challenges for business leaders this year, probably next, maybe for the next 2 years. And a key priority is for them to find ways to be more productive.
Yeah.
So cutting through that noise.
Yeah, and one of the things that I just say just quickly about complexity is that, let's understand what we mean by complex. And there's a book I read, actually, I think it's on my back shelf there somewhere. Doesn't matter. It's called Getting to Maybe by a Canadian author. And it's where I first heard this distinction between 3 different types of systems. There's simple, there's complicated, and there's complex. So the examples are: simple is like baking a cake, right? Yeah. If you're like me, you buy a cake mix, you add an egg to it, some water, you put it in the oven, you follow these 5 simple instructions, and typically you'll get a cake, right? Complicated is like doing that, but at a much greater spreadsheet level. It's like launching a rocket to the moon or something like that. It's hard, but if you follow all the steps in the right order, you'll probably get your rocket to the moon.
Sure.
Complex is actually how systems work, like a flock of birds or raising a child. And no list of instructions is going to actually help you with any of that. What tends to work in dealing with complex systems is actually having some core principles about how you operate. One of the things I love is, those swirling flocks of birds, like they're called murmurations, which I think is a lovely word. What controls that, those flocks of starlings, I think they are, has basically 3 principles. Fly as close to the other birds as possible. Fly towards the center of the flock, don't run into any other birds. And those principles are actually at tension with each other. So you have to be making decisions about which of those principles you're giving most weight to in that split second. But those 3 core principles define the behavior of the entire system. And I think one of the things that we're talking about here is not kind of linear tactics just to deal with complicated systems. A lot of them are principle-based, in terms of going, here are some core principles by which I operate, which will ground me in this VUCA world: volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, just as you said.
Excellent. So, and it's about people being clear on, what are those principles and how do we help each other through that?
Exactly. Yeah, right.
Cool. Well, if we've got time, I've got the VUCA antidote to share at the end. So let's wait for that in anticipation.
I've got my notes here, but I'm like, I didn't know what the VUCA antidote was. I need to reread my notes. That's good. Okay, well, I'm going to be staying on till the end now, just because you've hooked me in.
Excellent. Cool. So was that? Do you want to go with your first strategy, Michael, and talk us through that?
Yeah, and the first strategy for me is really, again, understanding that you're in a system and trying to expand your view and your understanding of the system. And so I would say, as a first strategy, if you're a busy manager trying to, and this is our kind of promise, we hope, work less hard but have more impact. People are overworking but also not having the impact that they want. I would say, as a starting point, my first strategy is know really clearly what your boss's boss cares about. What does your boss's boss care about? So let me unpack that for you. I think when we are working as managers, leaders, we have our own bubble, and what we think is important tends to be right there in front of us, and it becomes the all-consuming thing to get done. And as the saying goes, sometimes we lose sight of the forest for the trees. So one of the things that can help you be smarter about where you spend your time is not only just worrying about what your boss thinks about, but worries what your boss's boss thinks about. And why I like this as a discipline is that most people know who their boss's boss is. You know, they bump into them in the hallway, they have a name, they have a face. They're not just some sort of faceless executive, you know, far up the hierarchy. Or it's not some sort of abstract, you know, what does my company care about? You know, let's say you work for a random, you know, company. Let's say you work for BOC, whatever BOC is. And it's like, so what does BOC care about? And I'm like, who knows what BOC cares about? That's too hard to get your head around. But going, what does my boss's boss really care about? You can probably get clear on what that is. And if you're not entirely sure, you can probably have a conversation with somebody to try and figure it out. And it's going to say two things to you. The first is, I think a lot of the time we make up what our boss's boss cares about. We just assume that what we think they care about is important, it's urgent, it matters to them, and we're often wrong. You know, we've guessed it. It's an old story. Things have shifted for them, and what that means is we can spend an awful lot of time working on the wrong things. The other thing that allows you to do is it allows you to get clearer and bolder about making choices. And, you know, we'll talk about this a bit more, but at the heart of so much of this work is this question, which is, what am I going to say no to so I can say yes to the important stuff? And I'm reminded of, what's his name? Captain Abrashoff, I think his name was. He was kind of a fast company guy like 10 years ago. He wrote a book called It's Your Ship, I think it is. So he was like a high-performing captain in the US Navy and did things that were radical by, you know, trusting his people and doing stuff like that. And he said, look, there are two types of rules. There are rules that you can break. You should break those. And then there are rules you can't break. So you should break those very carefully, right? And the thing is, you don't know what those rules are. You don't know what those priorities are until you get connected with what your boss's boss is thinking about and worrying about. So that's my first tip, which is you think you know what your boss's boss cares about at the moment. You don't. You're making it up. You got it slightly wrong. It's outdated. It's extrapolated from too little data. So once you get clear on that, where you spend your time will also become clearer as well, I think.
Great. And that makes me think of sort of being very much linked to our stakeholder management and not only being aware of how do my objectives fit with my boss's boss, but am I taking the time to go and speak to my boss's boss, or certainly by my boss, to understand, ask the questions, understand those priorities.
Right, exactly. You know, it's funny, isn't it? You know, so many organizations go, we really want people to be strategic, but then strategy actually means stopping and slowing down and actually thinking. And the real way people show up in organizations is like not thinking too much, but just doing and being action oriented. And it's really slowing some of that down.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Talking of which, shall I launch into my first strategy?
Yeah, do.
So this is related to the Box of our sort of flagship coaching training program, Coaching for Great Work. So within that, and that's our coaching training for managers, how to have impactful coaching conversations in 10 minutes or less. And within that, we have 3 key principles. And the first principle is about be more lazy. And
wait, what do you mean be lazy?
Be more lazy. And yes, that's the reaction when we deliver it into our clients, and it's suddenly this air of brilliance. You embrace the laziness for the day. You weren't expecting that on a training. And it isn't about idleness or not doing work, but actually changing that balance between, as managers, we feel that we need to be adding value all of the time in terms of jumping in, giving advice, telling people what to do. And indeed our reports, the guys in our team expect that. You know, they'll get away when they can to say, you sort this out for me, you deal with it, you're the boss.
Yeah.
So it's about changing that balance from 80% tell to ask.
And you know what, I think if I can jump in, I think you're probably being generous with the 80% tell. I think, because it's funny when we do these programs and we've done these together, we talk about this and we find out that in theory everybody knows this stuff. Everybody knows, ask more questions, be more curious, give less advice. But when we actually do some of this practice coaching, holy cow, it's so interesting how quickly people want to start jumping to solutions, giving them answers, providing advice. We're so wired for that. I don't think most people realize just how twitchy they are about wanting to give advice. So I just want to say, when you said it's 80% telling, I'm like, yeah, if it's on a good day, it's 80% telling. On a bad day, it's like 98% telling. And then one question, which actually isn't a question at all. It's more like, have you thought of doing this? Which is just more advice. It's just now disguised as a question.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's the biggest struggle, isn't it, for people to sometimes hold the silence.
Right.
And having asked a question, because they're just, again, they're not used to that uncomfortable silence to allow people to think and process. And of course, that's how people learn.
So how do you help people manage the anxiety of asking a question? Because I think it is a moment of ambiguity and anxiety and uncertainty, because suddenly you're giving the other person some power and control, because you've said you get to choose the answer to this. So it is a stepping away from the comfort of control, which is what advice giving is. So how do you help people surf that feeling of uncertainty and discomfort?
Well, for me, I take very much the analogy of, I explain to people that actually if you can ask a question and then stop and allow people to think and reflect and come up with their own answer to that, it's very much putting people in the perspective of reward rather than risk.
Right.
Because, which I know you're a great believer in that, and it's so asking when we give instruction and dictate and tell people what to do, that can very much put people in the perspective of risk, because they might not understand the instruction, they might have a little bit of anxiety about delivering the task. Have I understood the instruction properly? Right. So to ask the question and to allow people to formulate for themselves is much more that perspective of reward and safety.
Right. So this is kind of connecting in with this kind of neuroscience insight, which is like 5 times a second, people's brains, everybody's brains, the people who are watching this right now, your brains 5 times a second are going, is it safe here or is it dangerous? Is it safe here or is it dangerous? Is it a place of risk or a reward? And obviously if it's a place of danger, a place of risk, they disengage from that. They're backing away from that. They're like, I'm stepping away. And actually they stop thinking so well, because it stops being engaging your prefrontal cortex, your kind of conscious brain. It's into the kind of amygdala, the fight or flight brain. But if you can make a place of reward, then people stay engaged. They're better using their brain. They're showing up in a stronger way. And just as you're saying, there are a number of factors that drive the sense of reward. And one of them is a sense of autonomy. And one of the things and status and kind of rank. And if you can increase rank and you can increase autonomy in the conversations you will have a more engaged person. And what you're saying, and I love the connection you're making, is asking the question is such a strong way of increasing rank and increasing autonomy in the people that you're managing. Yeah.
Which is why I think coaching's, the forgotten, it's certainly misunderstood, but I think it's the forgotten leadership skill.
Nice.
I always, Albert Einstein's quote is brilliant for this. If I had now to save the world, I'd spend 59 minutes defining the problem.
Right.
And 1 minute finding solutions. That's our role, isn't it, as managers, to help people get to the nub of the issue.
Yeah. So I don't know about you, but my it's just to build on that as a final comment. Yeah. My experience certainly is in most organizations we are really busy solving the wrong problems, and I think in part it's that default take. Let's get going on this. I have an idea on this. as opposed to slowing down and going, what is the real, what's the challenge here that we're really up against?
There you go. There's the link. So I was going to share the key coaching question for me.
Oh,
there it is.
Yeah.
What's the real challenge here for you? And two parts underlined there. Firstly, real. So that enables us to have the honest conversation and not get drawn into the temptation of beating around the bush.
Yeah,
we can address the elephant in the room if we need to. And for you is critical because it brings the spotlight back on the individual to ask, what's my involvement here? What responsibility do I have? What action can I take? So it's a very, very different question to what's the challenge versus what's the real challenge here for you.
It's interesting, isn't it? If you can almost see the hierarchy building, it's like, so what's the challenge? Sets up a kind of softer, more general conversation. What's the real challenge here? Kind of pushes it into I've got to think about what some root causes are. What's the real challenge here for you? Actually makes it less about putting out the fire and more about the person who you're coaching or managing trying to put out the fire and helping bring that spotlight, as you said, back to them. So I really like the way you built that question out like that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
So strategy number 3, what have we got?
Strategy number 3. Okay. I think what I'm going to offer up is, if you want to be able to work less hard, if you want to have more impact, if you want a team that is more self-sufficient, more autonomous, more confident, having more impact, having more focus, you've got to take the role of being encouraging learning in every interaction that you have. And I think we typically do a really terrible job at helping people learn in our organizations. And I say that with confidence because I know how adults learn. I've done a ton of reading around it. One of my favorite books at the moment, I'm going to hold it up. It's just handy there in my bookshelf. It's called Make It Stick. And it's written by some psychologists. And it's really about the very kind of cutting edge of neuroscience and psychology about what actually allows people to learn. And I would sum it up like this. People do not learn when you tell them something. And I mean, everybody knows that's true as soon as they stop and think about it. Drifts in one ear, drifts out the other ear almost immediately. People don't even learn when they do something. I mean, they do a little bit, but mostly they just process it and it gets it done. Where people learn is if they have a moment to stop and reflect on what just happened and go, okay, so what happened there? And the question, so, for instance, you and me, Jonathan, after we've done this, because this is the first time we've successfully done a Google Hangout, at the end of this, we'll do a little stop afterwards and go, so, okay, so how did that go? What did we learn? What was useful? What would we do differently next time?
Sure.
And, there's a great tradition, I think it comes from the US military again, called the after action review. Some very simple questions there. As far as I can remember there. So what happened? Actually, I think the first thing, what did we think would happen? Then what did happen? And then, so what do we need to do now? And then what do we need to do next time? So it kind of sets up insight and the gap between expectations and reality, and then drives learning for the now and for the next time round. Excuse me, I got a bit of a cold. But I think, you don't have time to do an after action review after every single conversation. That would be a bit weird. But I think there's one very good question. Actually, I'm going to give you 2 variations that I really like. That I think if you're a busy manager, you can add to the end of pretty much every conversation you have with your team, one-to-one, with a vendor, with a client, with a boss, with a peer. You finish a conversation and then you go, okay, so what was most useful or most valuable about that for you? What was most useful here for you? And when you ask a question like that, a few things happen. The first is you make them stop for a moment and figure out where the value was. They will miss the value otherwise. They'll just go, it's okay, and they'll move on without appreciating the value you've just brought and between the two of you created in that conversation. The second benefit is that you then get feedback about what worked. So next time you do a better job at the meeting, the team meeting, the conversation, the sales meeting, the whatever it might be, because you've got feedback around that. And the thirdly is you're constantly framing every interaction with you as valuable and useful. So you become a more valued player in the work that you do. So this is what I'm offering up as my second tip, our third tip in general, which is take the role of championing learning seriously. And you can do this quickly. We call it one of the coaching bookend questions, which is at the end of every conversation. Say to the people you've just interacted with, okay, so before we go, just let me check, what was most useful about this conversation for you? What was most valuable about this conversation for you? You know, what did you learn that you want to remember about this conversation? What was surprising about this? What was the best takeaway from this conversation? You know, there are variations. My habit, my default one is, what was most useful about this for you?
Love it. And it makes me think of, you know, when I'm doing team development training, a lot of the time we think about the Red Arrows, which is, you know, the Air Force display team, as a high performing team. And one of their, you know, what you were saying there makes me think of, there's a set pattern in terms of whenever they go out for a sortie, they always have a pre-brief. Yeah. In terms of what's the exercise, what's our aim and objective, what are we going to practice, obviously. They go out, they do the exercise, they come back, and then they always have a debrief. Right. And what's interesting about the debrief is it's always led by the squadron leader. And it's always involves what have I done well. Right. So this is your squadron leader at the front of the room, and also where could I improve? So there's that great focus around the leader models vulnerability early on to say, this is where I screwed up, and this is what I'm going to focus on for next time. Yeah, it's a great insight. And, you know, as the people who are listening to this, the managers and the leaders, there's something about how courageous will you be in terms of revealing your own doubts, your own insecurities, your own vulnerabilities. And what will that bring to the group in terms of allowing you to kind of look at where the challenges are and going, so good, what are we going to do differently next time? Yeah, I like that. Absolutely. All right, let me ping pong the ball back to you, Jonathan. So I've given my second tip. What's your second tip you want to share here? My second tip is, well, you alluded to it earlier. It's saying no. Yeah, I love this. Quite simply. Yeah. And I see it more and more, you know, going into clients and companies, and that you know, how do we say no? And I think it comes back to, you know, when we're asking the question of why do we say yes so easily? It comes back to that sense of being safe and avoiding risk. Right. We say yes because we want to avoid upsetting someone, disappointing someone, hurting their feelings. We want to avoid the risk of criticism. Actually, most of the time, rocking the boat, upsetting the apple cart, however you want to describe it. And there's often a cultural norm around that in organizations. So it's not like you're weak, everybody else does this well, but not you. It's like typically that's the way we behave around here, which is it's not cool for you to say no. Right. So you've got all of that cultural pressure driving you in terms of expected response. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, for those watching, if there's one really great article I'd really encourage people to read, that's the Harvard Business Review, Beware the Busy Manager. Right. A fantastic study. Heike Brush and Samantha Goschel were the authors. It was a 10-year study of 12 companies. Yeah. And they basically uncovered the two key ingredients that managers need for success. Number one was high focus, really focusing on the vision, the key goals and objectives, the great work that really matters. And that kind of connects back to knowing what your boss's boss cares about as well. That's part of that equation. Spot on. Yeah. Spot on. And number two was high energy. How are we applying energy to implementing our high focus, big rock, great work items. Yeah. And if you can combine those two, then it's creating what they termed as purposeful management or purposeful leadership rather than busyness and distraction.
Right. I remember reading that article. It's a pretty small number, right, in terms of in that top right-hand quadrant of high focus and high energy. I can't quite remember, but do you know how many people showed up there?
10%.
Yeah. Again, I bet you, I mean, that now feels high to me, you know.
Right.
I mean, my memory is that this is an article that's at least 10 years old now, maybe a little bit longer than that.
Yeah,
so kind of pre-smartphone area where, you know, era where we're all kind of over connected and over engaged, and you know, our attention is only scattering rather than not. So I think, you know, quite frankly, if 10% of managers have got high energy and high focus, you're probably in a high performing company.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things the purposeful 10% do very well is to challenge back.
Right.
And they can say no, and their view is that I'm not necessarily in this business to be liked, but I am here to be respected.
Right, and I'm here to have impact. Right,
I'm here to have impact, and I'll have the tricky conversation if I need to.
Right, and I love that piece around I'm willing to put my own discomfort behind my willingness to do the work that matters around that. Because, you know, here's the thing I always say, particularly when I'm talking about great work, you know, that context we started with, if everybody's happy, you're probably doing a lot of good work, but not a whole lot of great work. But here's my question. I mean, it's one thing for you to say, oh, we should say no more often. And, you know, I keep this by my desk. Let me just find it. You know, Steve Jobs, here we go. Focus means saying no to the hundreds of other good ideas that are out there. You know, so for him, in some ways, strategy can be best defined as how good are you at saying no. But the truth is we're terrible at saying no. So help me here. I mean, it's like, it's not enough for you to tell me to say no. You got to explain how I might say no when I swim in water where everybody says yes, and the expectation is for me to say yes.
Sure. So
what do you got?
You want a very simple 3-part formula?
Yeah, I'd love that.
Number one, empathize with the other person who's giving you the request, asking for you to deliver the task. Empathize and reflect how you understand that it's important for them.
Right.
That softens the blow, if you like, in that you're showing that you're stepping into the shoes of them, and you understand. You've given me this request, so Michael, if you wanted by tomorrow afternoon a full UK box of crayons, I want the full-blown state of the nation report. What have we delivered? What's all the evaluation, the feedback? Who are our new markets? That's a big task.
I would like that, please, Jonathan.
So my response, being saying no, is politely and gently, is to empathize. Michael, I understand why that's important. It's really important to focus on the box of crayons clients and deliver a great work, you know, great work, great service. Part 2 is...
So I expect to have your report on my desk in the morning. Oh, sorry, there's a part 2, okay.
Part 2 is I can't deliver for Friday because...
Yeah.
And then we follow up with what's the evidence-based stuff.
Yeah, because,
so
because you're lazy, because you don't respect me.
I'm doing the lazy manager bit very well.
Okay, nice. I like it.
So the because might be, I want to market our Hangout to our current clients, to the US and Canada. I'm shaping our next suite of Hangouts. Nice. And you know, here's my in tray, and here are all my appointments till Friday. So the schedule is crammed. Part 3 is what's the constructive alternative, if you like. Can I suggest, or how about, I can't deliver on Friday, but how about Wednesday afternoon? Or how about I delegate this to Rupert, who's, you know, this would be a really good development task for him, bringing together a view of our UK customer base, and a great opportunity.
Well, I'd ask you immediately, do you actually know somebody called Rupert?
I do, yes. There are lots of Ruperts in the UK.
Hold it up for me again, because I didn't quite see it. Just so I can see what you got there. You got empathize, because ... can I suggest ... Okay, so those are nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So nice hard formula there.
And I know you're, so again, I think we're very good at the because bit, the part 2, but that softer sort of empathizing and
yeah,
coming with the alternative, we don't do so much. And I know you're a big advocate of rather than just saying no, sometimes it's about saying no more slowly, and how does it suit our agenda?
Certainly. And one of the things that I would do even before I implemented those 3 questions is, those 3 stages is just be a bit more curious about the request. So let me just check. What's most important for you about this report? Why is it so urgent? When you say a full report, what do you mean by a full report? If there's only one tiny part of that report that I could do, where would you want me to focus? And there's just a bunch of questions that get clear on what the real request is, because we tend to make stuff up about that. Yeah, I like it.
Being more curious.
Well, that actually leads nicely, I think, to my final tip, which is around getting clear on the standard of delivery required. Because my take on it would be that we overwork too much of the work that we do. And there's a great concept. It comes from the kind of lean world. It's kind of very prevalent in the whole Silicon Valley hipster place. It's called MVP, minimum viable product, which is what's the minimum we can do to test this out, try it out before getting feedback. And basically, it's another way of thinking about it is rapid prototyping. You know, so if you're building a new product, you don't disappear for 95 years and then come out going, I've invented it, it's perfect. And then you test it out and nobody wants it. What you do is you put the basics out. You go, okay, oh, they like this, or they don't like that. Oh, they want it in pink, they don't want it in black, whatever it might be. And then you go back and you do kind of rapid iterations around that. And I think there's something we can take away from here to go. When you think about all the work that's on your plate, do you know what the minimum standard of acceptability is for all of that work? And if not, why don't you find that out? Because once you know what acceptable means, you then have a choice about, do I deliver this at an acceptable level, or do I deliver it at an exceptional level? And the kind of people that hang out with us right here and who are interested in this stuff and want work less hard and have more impact tend to be the people who by default go, I'm going to make everything exceptional. And quite frankly, that is delusional. It's impossible. You've really got to make your choices about where you put your time and effort and energy. It's back to that Steve Jobs quote that we showed a little earlier on. So for me, part of what this is about is thinking to yourself, hey, of all the stuff I'm doing, what are my standards of delivery for each of those products? And how do I ratchet down some of my delivery standards for some of the stuff I'm on so that I can ratchet up my standards for the stuff that matters most to me, to my great work, if you like. So that would be my final tip that I'd throw out there, which is like get really clear on those standards of delivery and have a think about that concept of MVP, minimum viable product.
Minimum viable product. And do you have a view on, or have you had feedback from people in terms of how they prioritize? What are those things that I should do MVP on?
Yeah.
And where should I focus on the exceptional?
Yeah, so there's an exercise from the Do More Great Workbook. I think it's map number 6 or 7 called the I Care, They Care matrix. And let me see if I can just quickly draw it for you. This is on-air creation. So here we go. So here we go. Classic consultant 2x2 2x2 box, and you can see it plus and minus down there. So what I think is on the horizontal line, you think about all the stuff that's on your plate, and here it's like the stuff my boss cares about. And then on the vertical line, up and down here, this is all the stuff on your plate, the stuff I care about. and put all your tasks. I mean, one way of doing this, look at how you spent the last 2 weeks and put your tasks into these different boxes. And some of them will fall into this category here, which is actually, I don't care about it, and my boss doesn't really care about it. At which stage you go, why the hell am I doing this? And you stop doing it.
Sure.
If it shows up to this one up here, this is the stuff that I care about, but my boss doesn't care about. So then you go, okay, so how do I get my boss to start caring about this? How do I create space and time to make it relevant? How do I do a little skunk works off on the side? The stuff down here is the stuff that your boss cares about, but you don't care about. And that's really where you go, okay, so it needs to get done. Doesn't necessarily need to get done by me. Maybe I can delegate this. But if it does have to be done by me, what's the minimum viable product I deliver this on? And then the stuff up the top here, this is often kind of a nice sweet spot, which is your boss cares about it, you care about it. Then you're going, actually, here's where I really want to kind of deliver and do a nice job with that. So that's one simple exercise to kind of go, how am I spending my time? And once I clear on that, how do I ratchet some stuff down and increase the impact and focus on some other stuff?
Fantastic. I think it's again, to me, a classic example of, some really simple stuff that we just don't take the time to do and think about. That if we had a minute in the week just to write that stuff down on Monday morning, whenever, to reflect on it, it would make such a difference, such an impact.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? We talked about it being dealing with complexity about VUCA and about principles, and really so much of what we've covered about the manifestations of the same core principle is figure out what really matters, say yes to that, do a better job at saying no to that, and then learn. So it's like figure out what matters, learn about it, then figure out what matters, then learn, then figure out what matters. Yeah, so we've only got, it's like almost 1:45, and you promised the antidote to VUCA. So we're almost done. So I need you to share this with me. When you say you got an alternative to VUCA, what is it?
Should we not do it for next time?
Well, that's a nice tease, but I need it now. That's why I'm still here. Okay. I would have left 10 minutes ago otherwise.
Here we go, the VUCA antidote. So before I launch into that, for our viewers, any sort of questions you want to sort of throw in, jump onto chat or email me. We're here online, and we'd love to hear those before we close the call in a minute. So this is known as the VUCA Prime. This is the antidote. What does each part of the VUCA letter need in terms of countering? Nice. So starting with volatility. With volatility, we need a very clear and concise and communicated vision.
Right.
What that does, and again, in a lot of organizations, the vision might be there, but it's sometimes hidden away, and certainly it's not bought in across the whole company. Yeah. But to have a really clear, concise vision that's communicated and everyone understands and has on their desks or in their wallets, whatever it might be, right. It engages people first of all, but right. It also enables people to apply their energy and make informed choices.
So this kind of comes back to what's important, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what it's back to the focus and energy. If people don't know what they need to focus and be energized around, it's not going to happen. They're going to get sucked into the busy and distracted world that is all the good work stuff and a lot of bad work.
Nice. I like it.
Uncertainty, that needs understanding. So very much the role of the manager in these times to be sitting down with the team, having regular, honest and open conversations, communication in terms of understanding how people thinking, what are they feeling, what are their concerns,
right?
What's exciting them, what are they doing great at? Those regular one-to-one conversations, and it's really just.
Well, I can just make the connection, sorry to interrupt, around this piece around learning, which we talked about as well, which is how do you extract the wisdom and the learning from the situation? So it's not just a download of more information, it's let's extract the wisdom that's here.
Absolutely, and it's also the manager, just highlighting that he has everyone's best interests at heart and reiterating that. to give, again, back that sense of safety rather than risk.
Yeah.
Complexity needs clarity.
Right.
So rather than overcomplicating things, do we have simple process? Are we creating clear processes within our own organizations?
And I like that. I think there's a link back to the question you shared, which is, what's the real challenge here for you? Is a great question to drive that clarity. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And finally, ambiguity needs agility. Quite an obvious one, but it's that flexibility to respond to changing circumstances. Are people championing change rather than dragging their heels a little bit or sitting on the fence? And adapting, giving the freedom and courage to adapt to their changing circumstances. So you get, and there's this really interesting sort of title around, rather than hierarchy and people in sort of more senior positions, it's about wirarchy.
Oh, I like that. I've not heard of that before.
No, so it's, however senior or junior someone is, are we, where feasible, where possible, enabling people to apply themselves based on their strengths, and knowledge and experience. So it's about wiring people in to help us navigate through the VUCA environment. So in that sense, it's not necessarily an environment of risk, but an environment of development and true collaboration.
I like that. Do you know who developed the VUCA Prime model?
I'm not sure. No, I think it, it's on there with Mr. Google, and there's lots more information about that. And but I can go back and find out and let everyone know when we distribute the video. Okay,
that's cool. So I think our work here is done, Jonathan.
Our work here is done. And then with your great question for our viewers, you asked the question.
Well, Jonathan and I have covered a lot. We kind of done some kind of high level stuff around VUCA and VUCA Prime. We've shared between us 5 specific kind of approaches around this. But if you could take just one thing away from here, what was most useful or most valuable for you from this Google Hangout with Jonathan and me? Take that insight, translate it into action, and start doing something differently as a result of watching this with us. The model we teach at Box of Crayons is coaching is insight leads to behavior change, leads to impact. Insight, action, impact. We've given you insight. We've sparked insight for you. You can feel it in your bones, but you need to move to action so that it then creates impact. So that's my encouragement for people now.
Yeah, brilliant. And final from me, we'll send out the link for the video, obviously. Yeah. And we'd love your feedback, guys, in terms of those watching live and those who've watched the video. New Hangout topics you like or would like to see. Yeah. What would you like? What was great? What would you like to see a little bit better next time? Nice. Please let us know. And Michael, congratulations on your book launch today. Do you want to share the website again quickly?
Sure. It's called thecoachinghabit.com. The book's going to come out March 1st, 2016, but we've already got a website up. We've already got amazing blurbs from over 70 different highfalutin business leaders. And there's a place to sign up if you're interested in getting pre-publication information around that. So thecoachinghabit.com. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you, sir. Always a pleasure. And goodbye, everyone. Happy breakfast in America and Canada, and enjoy your lunch in the UK.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Cheers, guys.